Kruger here, and you're listening to Mike the Birdman and the rest of the crew this week in Geek.net.
Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
Happy Halloween, fuckface!
This is the latest disclosure in a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington. It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. A widespread investigation of reports from funeral homes, morgues, and hospitals has concluded that the unburied dead are coming back to life and seeking human victims.
What? Something my granddaddy used to tell us. You know Macumbo? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. He used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Where does it say we should do any one thing but shoot the mothers in the head?
You don't have enough ammunition, Captain. Shoot them all in the head. Time to have done that would have been at the beginning. No. They let them overrun us. They have overrun us, you know. We're in the minority now. Something like 400,000 to 1 by my calculations.
Zombies, man. They creep me out.
Happy Halloween, my friends out there in podcast land. It is I, one of your many survivors of this Night of the Living Dead, or flesh-eating ghouls, you perhaps. I am Mike the Birdman, but I am not alone as I trek across the zombie-infested wasteland that is now known as planet Earth. I'm joined by my good friend, compatriot, and hopefully meat shield when shit goes to hell.
Meat shield indeed, Alex the producer.
And we are trusting, once again, our friend, colleague, and just all-around good guy who's been around the internet forever. You know him. I know him. He's the guy who will most likely survive the zombie apocalypse out of the three of us.
I hope. We'll see. It's James.
So we have James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, of course, from Cinemassacre.com. If you want to check him out, he's on YouTube and every conceivable platform. And you can also get his game on the Switch, PC, and I think it's available on the Switch, or not the Switch, PS5 and Xbox Series X now, too, I think. So anyway, so yes, guys, as we often do each and every Halloween, we do a retrospective or a discussion about a major horror franchise or major horror idea. And this year, well, it's kind of hard not to acknowledge what's going on in the world with the pandemic and everything else and viruses and strange things going on. And that got me thinking, there was an old CDC thing where they talked about how would you survive a zombie apocalypse? And it was a fun training exercise that was meant to show about the spread of viruses. And I got to thinking about that, thinking, we've never talked about George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead on this show. And then serendipitously the other day, James's Night of the Living Dead commentary he did a couple of years ago came up on my recommended video list. I'm thinking, you know what? Why don't we talk about this? These movies have been around since 1968. The most recent one, I think, came out in what, James? 2009 with Survival, right?
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, the time really flies.
Yeah, it's been just this franchise.
And we're only counting his movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
although we will.
That was when was Survival of the Dead? It was 2009. You are correct.
And we are going to talk about those movies a little bit. We'll talk about the Savini remake in 90, the Zack Schneider, James Gunn one from 2004. And then we don't talk about the Day of the Dead from the mid 2000s.
Okay. Yeah, so terrible. Are we doing, Dead movies, or are we doing just the Dead movies, or Romero like as a whole?
Just Romero's Dead kind of universe, because as I was watching these movies, so how we're going to do this tonight for you, our listeners, we're going to kind of talk about how we found these movies, how they have impacted us either as film fans, and in James' case, a filmmaker perhaps, and just, where they are. Then we'll talk about the movies themselves. What are our favorites? What are not our favorites? Favorite moments, kills, whatever. And then what are our zombie plans? In the ideal world, can you survive the end of the world? But then we'll kind of talk about what's realistically going to happen and what would probably happen in the real world if suddenly the dead started to walk. So let's start things off with our guest, James. How did you first discover the Night of the Living Dead movies?
I can't remember exactly, but it might have been Leonard Maltin, because I remember reading his movie review books where he would, he would rate them like 1 to 4 stars, or maybe he did the 5-star, I forget. But he was kind of the go-to guy back then, where I would hear about all these movies from, and you get those really thick, books that were like almost as thick as a phone book. And he'd have all those reviews. And I read the one for Night of the Living Dead, and I remember him saying, like, this movie is really scary. Like seriously, do not watch this with the lights off. Do not watch it before bed, because it will scare the hell out of you. And I was like, whoa, like, I need to see this. It's crazy to think. I don't know when that was written, but with The Exorcist and everything that happened after Night of the Living Dead, it seems pretty tame. But at that time, being at that age, I was probably like a young teen, but I hadn't seen anything like that yet. I'd seen the Universal monsters and everything, but this was sort of like the next level. And so I rented it one time, and I remember like not being scared, but being like a little bit tense and just loving the hell out of it, because it was black and white. It was like watching, one of the classic Universals, except that you could tell there was a little bit more of like a low budget handheld camera. It was a lot more gritty, and the violence and that stabbing scene where the little girl stabs her mother. Like, it was so weird and nightmarish that oh man, it just changed me. Like, after that, I wanted to make horror films.
Oh wow. So Alex, what about you, man? How did you first discover the world of The Walking Dead?
Honestly, I was thinking about that as you guys were talking, and I realized I picked it up in a bargain bin in the early 90s. I think it's even before Walmart bought out Wilco and expanded into Canada. I remember just, being a kid, being told, here's $1. You can pick up any movie you want out of the bin. And I think it was one of those, because I think isn't there a copyright issue with the original movie where pretty much anybody could release it or something?
Yeah, they forgot to put the copyright symbol on it back. Well, they did, but that was when it was called Night of Anubis or Anubis, the Egyptian god of like embalming or whatever. And they changed the title because they're like, well, how many people know what that is? So they changed Night of the Living Dead. But when they swapped out the title card, they didn't have the copyright symbol on there. Nowadays, that wouldn't matter. But back then, they lost the copyright.
I remember it was one of those like SLP tapes from like Front Row Features or Madison or something, with really, really like crappy screen art that they put on the front. And, with the thing weighed maybe like a couple feathers, but I was like, oh, cool. Zombies. I'm like 6 or 7. And my parents went, yeah, okay. They looked at it, and to them, it's like, it's old, so it can't be scary.
Yeah.
So I watched it, and I was initially, I think, a little bored, then freaked out, and then it stayed on a shelf somewhere for many, many years. And sometime in high school, I think it was when the remake of Dawn of the Dead came out, I was like, wait, there's more of these? And then after watching the Dawn of the Dead remake, I had to go back and watch Dawn and Day.
Yeah, totally.
So how I discovered these movies is kind of a rather weird and roundabout story, because each one I discovered has a weird kind of story behind it. So the first time I saw Night of the Living Dead, it was before I was 10 years old. I know that for sure. And my next door neighbor up the street is the son of a very famous Canadian media personality. I don't want to say the name just for kind of privacy reasons. But the family was remarkably well off, and they had an original something, or like a really high end quality VHS of Night of the Living Dead, and I used to play with their like kids all the time. And I remember coming over really early one morning to hang out with their sons. They went and had a nap, and I was just like, well, they're like, we want you to hang out, but we're gonna go take a nap for like an hour. So I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. I'll entertain myself. And I remember just watching this strange black and white movie. I'd never seen anything like that before. I'd never seen a horror movie in black and white. I mean, by that time I'd seen Jason and Freddy, but I'd never seen a zombie movie before. And this is when Return of the Living Dead would be out. I think Return of the Living Dead Part 2 is out around this time. So I'd seen the advertising, but I never saw the movie. So I saw that. And then when I was in elementary school, there was this book on special effects in my elementary school library. And it has the very famous kill from Dawn of the Dead where Tom Savini's character puts the machete into the head of the one zombie, and it sprays all that bright reddish orange blood. And it talks about how that effect was done. And it's this big, colorful book in, like I said, an elementary school. And I took that book out and I started reading about this Dawn of the Dead movie. And I had no idea there was a sequel to this, or let alone who George Romero was. And that led me down the rabbit hole to like, there's a sequel called Day of the Dead. And I remember it was Boxing Day up here in Canada, and we had this retail chain called Music World, and they were selling all these collector's editions of VHSs. And I got this 2-pack of Day of the Dead, and I was so thrilled to find it because like Blockbuster didn't have it and all the local video stores didn't own it. So I grabbed that for like $10. I was so happy. And then I found the sequel Day of the Dead a couple months later. And the first time I watched it, I was in my room. Obviously it's the middle of December, and just seeing all these vivid kills. I'd never seen something so visceral, because there's something about how Jason and Freddy kill people. It's just, there's a slash, maybe there's a little gore. It's not as bad as seeing someone's intestines being ripped out or throats being ripped out, and just pieces of people flying everywhere.
Those are more comical.
Yeah.
Right. They're more fantastical than somebody just biting into you.
Yeah. It's more primal, I guess. I'd never seen violence on that level before. And then when I finally got around to watching Day of the Dead, I think I watched it with a couple friends from high school, and I made the very stupid mistake of eating spaghetti while watching this movie. I am a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So I'm like I said, a fucking idiot. So that was a good time. So
especially
I guess,
Day of the Dead. Yeah, Day of the Dead was like at the time when I saw that was like the goriest film. Like when that zombie like sat up from that operating table and his like innards just spill out from gravity. I was just like, wow, this is insane. And then the shovel in the mouth, and all that. Like,
it's a way of seeing like how advanced each makeup got out, like, each decade. Like, here's the end of the 60s, here's the 70s, here's what the 80s can do.
Yeah, I don't think they ever topped 85 zombie films. I mean, you had Day of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead, and Reanimator. And I don't think I've seen effects that good since.
There's that weird period between like 78 and 85, 86 when you had like The Thing and everything. And then they all went crazy with CG.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but, I mean, still practical effects, but not as much. And I just don't think they ever, they didn't really push it further. I mean, there were some good things every now and then. There was Slither. You ever see that one?
Yeah. I haven't yet. That's on my list to watch on like Amazon.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's good. From what I remember, it was good. But yeah, I mean, the first three, the trilogy, it was the Dead trilogy for a long time. And then I liked Land of the Dead. I really like that one too.
I actually just finished watching that again for like the first time in like easily 10 years, just before we recorded the show. I liked it more now, I guess, because all these movies are so fresh in my mind. And I guess that'll kind of get us to transition into our next thing, to talk about the individual films themselves. To talk about the original, what more can we really say that hasn't been said by people who are way smarter and more famous than us? Um, but
Well,
I
I
don't
did a
know, like,
full length commentary, and still there's like more to say. And
well,
you know,
you've been to some of the places where these were filmed.
oh yeah, because a lot of it was filmed near Pittsburgh. Um, the Night of the Living Dead cemetery is pretty much how it looks in the film. Like all the gravestones are there. It's just some of the trees are missing because there was a storm. But it's interesting because when you go to these locations, you start to understand why they filmed it from the angles that they did, and you realize how much of it is accurate, and how much is cheating. Like when they're walking toward the grave, like how many times do they pass the grave they're going to before they come back to it? Things like that. It's just cool that once you go to the location, you understand the space that it was filmed in, and yeah, it's a great film study thing.
Do you know if the farmhouse is still around?
Oh, do you mean like the main house in the
Yeah.
movie? No, it was pretty much going to be bulldozed when they were filming because I think that's how they got the house, because they were going to tear it down. Uh, so it was torn down pretty much after they shot. I don't know where the location was. I imagine it's just a farm field somewhere, but I'm sure you could find it. I'm sure somebody's posted. But the basement, though, the basement's a whole other story because they actually did it in the room where they edited the film, I believe.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah, you'd have to look into that, but I don't know if that's a spot you can like visit, or if it's like if it exists anymore. Uh, but yeah, I mean, so it was at least two locations.
Another one that I always thought was like my favorite of these movies for the longest time was Dawn, because obviously it was
Yeah.
so gory, so over the top, it was so critically acclaimed. But that's not my favorite anymore. As the years have gone on, and especially it just got reinforced while I was doing research for this. Day of the Dead, I think, is my favorite of all the George Romero movies he's done. Maybe Creepshow 2, or sorry, the original Creepshow might be a tie there. But Day of the Dead, there's something so dark and just, that movie is fucking mean. That movie wants you to suffer.
Yeah.
And there's something about that I really like. Plus having the really strong female protagonist in Sarah, I really like that, because that was such a change from Fran in Dawn, because she started out really weak, then became strong, whereas Sarah
Mhm.
was she was strong from the beginning, didn't take any bullshit. She stood up to Rhodes and almost got her head blown off for it, and only genuinely wanted to do the right thing the whole time. But it's the gore effects in that movie. I'm still blown away. There's one kill where I think it's uh Rickles, and they tear him apart and his face comes off. And just imagining that pain in your final moments on Earth. Holy shit.
Yeah. There's little details in there too. Like I never noticed till like many watches how like you actually see the guy's vocal cords being torn out. And when you first watch it, just looks like a bunch of, stringy like guts and flesh, whatever. But it was actually his vocal cords are meant to be like pulled, and then you hear the sound effect of his voice getting higher in pitch, and it's like if you pulled the tape from a audio cassette, and it just sort of like goes and then just snaps off. It's crazy. Like that
Which
that amount of comical detail. You know?
Thank you, high definition, right?
Yes.
And there's another thing that I really like about Day 2, how the line between the dead and the living is starting to blur with like Bub, and it broke my heart when Dr. Logan dies and Bub tries to give him his leash, saying, "Get up, please get up," and then he sort of cries out in agony as his friend and mentor is gone. And even in high school, that affected me in that I never thought a horror movie could have an emotional response like that. Like Dawn has some moments of that when Roger dies, because you see him and Peter's friendship kind of grow from becoming random people who meet in the apartment raid to genuinely being buddies over the course of a couple days. So they become, a true kind of bromance there. But yeah, that surprised me. And then finally, before I pass this to the next person, Night of Living Dead 1990, directed by Tom Savini, Patricia Tallman as a reinterpretation of Barbara. I had only seen a couple movies with super strong women in it, like Ripley from Aliens and Sarah Connor from The Terminator later in the film, but I'd never seen just someone reinterpret a role before, because that was, I think, the first remake I ever saw, because I never saw The Fly or anything like that, or The Thing. I didn't see The Thing until much, much, much later. And it was just, I thought it was a really good interpretation. Plus, having Tony Todd as Ben, I had no idea who Tony Todd was. And there was just something
I
very
don't think anybody did at that time.
no, and he did Star Trek later on, and Candyman, and a bunch of other big
Well,
roles.
and how rare is it now to see him play a good guy?
Yeah, because he's like, you need an evil bad guy, you go for him. I like this past summer, he's Scareglow in Kevin Smith's He-Man series. So I was just so impressed by those two performances, and it's not that the supporting cast is bad around them, but those two steal the show.
It's also not nearly as gory as I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Like I rewatched that one. Like I hadn't seen it in probably 15 years, and rewatching it, I'm like, it's actually a lot more tame than I remember. And it's pretty good as far as following the remake, but just tweaking it enough for 1990.
Yeah, like Day of the Dead was like the goriest, and then it's sort of like that was just a peak, and then they kind of went, wound it back a little bit, I guess, because at that point it's like, how much gorier could you get, like without going full, dead alive?
Yeah, and it's almost like maybe like quickly remake the original movie so that we can put a proper copyright on it and market
You know
these
what?
together.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were trying to do. They tried it in numerous ways. They tried colorizing the original. They tried, remaking it, and they also did that 30th anniversary, like
3D one.
Oh no, not even that, but the special edition. It was basically kind of like a George Lucas, you know, Star Wars type of thing where they added a bunch of scenes in there. Did you ever see that one?
I did, and
No, I haven't.
it seemed very, very jarring because the quality would change, and they tried to match it up, but they couldn't.
Yeah, and you know what? It was an interesting idea. It was interesting to see the plot of the movie from different, you know, uh, scenes. Like to go back to a movie that was made 30 years earlier and try to add scenes to it was kind of a cool idea. And there are some parts that work when you see like extra shots of the zombies, and the part with the original zombie Bill Heinzman. They did the best they could, but the guy was 30 years older. They put him in the original like makeup and everything, tried to make him look as close as they could to the original scene. All that stuff's kind of forgivable. But the weird stuff was like all those scenes with the priest and the music, like that just weird like synth music they put in it, and like they really did butcher it, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So I guess let's throw things to James and then Alex. What's your favorite, least favorite, and just anything interesting that you've observed while watching these movies? And this can be anything from the original all the way to Survival.
Oh, okay. So it's favorite and least favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So favorite's the tough one because it's one of the first three. It's the same way I feel about the first three Frankensteins, the Karloff trilogy. It's like they're all so different, but it's like hard to pick a favorite. Um, like each one is a masterpiece. So I think at the moment I'm thinking Dawn of the Dead, but I know I've kind of flip around. Sometimes I like Day of the Dead. I think that might be the best one actually. My least favorite is Diary of the Dead. Um, I mean, like it's just I think just stylistically it's so weird. The found footage thing doesn't work. If they wanted to do found footage, then do found footage, but they have it in these uh like there's a lot of parts in it where there's no way this could be found footage because of the way they shoot everything. They manage to capture everything perfectly in the frame. Everybody is mic'd so you can hear everybody's voices even when you shouldn't really be hearing it that clear. The music was like a weird choice, even though they explain it. How the girl who's the editor, she uh, puts music in it to scare you, and it's just badly acted, like all across the board. Every single actor in it is horrible. I hate
Oh.
to shit on anything Romero did, but it's just that movie is just so uh it's just so like off tone.
That movie I think had an interesting idea, and I think
Yeah,
it could work now, especially if they did the found footage. Think about it. Everybody has a cell phone in their pocket, and obviously at that time that's what Romero was kind of tapping into, but there wasn't the prevalence of Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, all those other things. Then you could really piece something together, and maybe there's something to be done. If someone ever wanted to remake Diary of the Dead, you could do it. I don't think it would be terribly looked down upon, but I could be wrong.
yeah, no,
Um,
I think it could. I think that totally is worth a remake, to be honest. Because that was kind of right before, uh, you know, cell phone footage became such a big thing. I mean, I don't remember at that time if we were recording on our phones that often, at least.
yeah,
Um,
like it wasn't high def like
Well,
now because like
what year was it? 07 or 09?
'07, I think.
Before the
it's
iPhone, we didn't
probably
have smartphones, so
yeah,
it would have been flip phones. Everybody had razors, and then we still had the pocket cams, right? Like the flip cams.
yeah. That's kind of like right before I think that they started to become a thing.
Like YouTube had just launched like a year and a half earlier, so there
Yeah,
wasn't really like I feel like had let's say had he lived longer and made another film, there would have been something about live streaming.
The one thing I'll say about that film and Romero, he definitely was ahead of the game. Like whether he meant to or not, he kind of was almost like you know, a predictor of like, you know, how things would become, like with everybody recording stuff and, you know, posting about this and that.
So, Alex, what about you, man? What's your favorite and least favorite, and just anything that you want to share from this?
You guys might throw shade at me, but my favorite is Land.
Okay.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters. Obviously, it to, and it might sound shallow, but it might just be because I like the production values of it.
Yeah.
Like it was that weird place where it's like Hollywood was trying to make him elevated from cult status, right? Like I think it's the highest budget movie he made.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
like we're looking
very
at like
polished. Yeah.
yeah,
Polished
like
look.
about a $20 million budget, whereas like the immediate film after only cost $2 million, and all his
Mhm.
films before that. So not that production values maketh the film, right? But it was this weird place where it almost felt like actors were uh, trying to be in the film because it would be hip to be with him because he's the granddaddy of the Dead films. And it was
Yeah.
this. I remember there being a big thing. I don't know how big it was in the States, but like up here, because he was living up here at the time, they made a big thing about how it's like he's returning to the franchise after 20 years. They're reviving a series. It was like this is going to be his like
Oh,
revival of Star Wars.
yeah. Oh, I remember following it the same way I followed Star Wars. It was like I've been hearing about that movie since the '90s. I just remember like wondering like, when is he going to make another Dead film? And then I kept hearing about this Twilight of the Dead or Dusk of the Dead that was supposed to be coming, and he had a script and like it had a lot of false starts, and he was trying to get it made, and then he finally did, and here it is, like a brand new George Romero Dead film, the first one that came out with since I was already a fan. Like it was the first one that I saw in the theater. Um, and yeah, I mean the production quality is great. Like when all the zombies are rising out of the water.
All the
Um,
practical effects again, because this is right smack dab in the middle of CGI hell.
yeah, there is some CG, but there's not a lot of it. Like there's a I mean it is used, but there's like a mix.
The makeup's practical, but the
Yeah.
gore's a mix of CG and practical.
Yeah, and this is right when you started getting like hot celebrities that wanted to be, hey, I want to be a zombie in one of your films, like putting people in the background just because they wanted to be in it.
Yeah,
That
Simon
that became a
Pegg and
thing.
Frost are in there.
Yeah, and of course, you got Tom Savini showing up, and um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And he's
it's
the only character, the only character in a Romero Dead film that crosses over until we got to Diary and Survival.
yeah, and it's like the only thing I can equate to this is like when you get celebrities that do cameos in like a Kevin Smith movie, or when you get uh sort of like the Tarantino grindhouse films, right? It's
Mhm.
got that sort of a feel. That was that it's cool to make this schlocky film. That was the feel behind it. So I dug it. I saw it. I I got it on home video when I bought my HD DVD player, and it came with with a combo disc, DVD on one side, HD DVD on the other.
Oh, wow.
so so I do remember that being significant there. As far as the least favorite, I actually haven't seen I saw a part of Diary, and it turned me off. I didn't like the way it was shot at the
Mhm.
time, and I never did see Survival, so I can't really rate them. But and you guys are gonna hate me. I think my least favorite is the first film.
Oh,
It's
wow.
definitely the slowest of all.
And I think that might be why, in that it's I totally get and I really appreciate the cinematic art that it is. I just don't feel it would, like, you can't show that to and like kids now and have them even sit through it. There's nothing that's going to hook them in. They're going to say it's boring and slow, even though we can appreciate it now. And um, I feel like it's almost a better starting point now to start with the 1990 remake and then go back
That's
and
what
watch
I would do.
Dawn and Day and then if you really appreciate it, watch the original, because I feel like if you show the original to a brand new viewer now, for the most part, they might be turned off and not watch the rest of the series.
Well, it is an awkward film. Like there's a certain level, like just like awkwardness, like whether it's like some of the dialogue, like they're coming to get you, Barbara, all that. Um, uh, so
Like
I can totally
like
see
we
it. It's a
yeah, like
shame,
we get
but
it,
it's
and as film buffs we love it, right? But I
yeah,
can see why. Like, I still like it, but I would say it's not something I would use to introduce. You might show a poster or a clip or two, but I don't think you can get young people to sit down and watch it and then actually go, but oh, the rest of the series is amazing. They'll be like, yeah, I'll take your word for it and walk away.
yeah. Like it has to be viewed from a historical context. It has to be looked at like, hey, the MPA rating system came out like right after this movie, like the same year or the year after. I forget which, but I don't know if it was the movie that caused it. But there's also Bonnie and Clyde, I think, the same year. But But yeah, I mean, it's such a historical film because I think of it as the last classic horror film. It's
Oh
black
yeah,
and white,
totally.
except yeah, it's
Like
black and
you,
white, but it
because you
has
look at
like
it,
horror.
it's significantly more scary and up to date than, let's say, something that like my grandmother would say was, "Oh, Rosemary's Baby was terrifying." Really, you know what I mean? It's a good movie, but that's what a serious horror film was. And then you have Night of the Living Dead, and then bam, you get hit with The Exorcist, which is like the first one that really holds up even today. Like you can show The Exorcist to kids and they'll be terrified. Whereas if you go to anything before those two, and it's sort of like, so I see it as a transitionary film. I get what you're saying totally.
They might. I mean, I kind of found The Exorcist kind of funny when I first saw it, but
no, but like there are scenes, like things, again, innovation where, you know, like crab walking, the crazy, the vulgarity of it. If the MPA wasn't made specifically for Night of the Living Dead, it was probably for The Exorcist.
Now,
yeah, there's a creepiness that was never copied since Night of the Living Dead because it's the only black and white one of the series. And like the scene where the little girl stabs her mom, like that I can't picture that scene in color because it's the contrast between the white and the black on the
like
wall.
Psycho.
Like that shot where, when the blood hits the wall, it just looks like a just splotch of like just dark goo like dripping down, and the echoing like sound effect that they used on the screaming, like there's this weird nightmare quality to it where it's like, the way people act and it isn't quite natural sometimes, and it just has this very just unnerving like atmosphere that none of the other ones did. So it's different, it's creepy in its own way.
So here's a strange question to throw out to the floor. Is there any zombie or kill or even character that really stands out as your favorite among the series? And I'll kind of start first to give you guys an idea to think. When I think of the zombies from this, there are two that immediately come to mind. There's the one from Dawn of the Dead, who's what I would dub the airport zombie, who's essentially the poster zombie. That one I think of a lot. And the Day of the Dead guts zombie, in terms of just special effects, how they look, how disgusting it is when those guts hit the floor and you just hear that disgusting splat. By the way, that's when I puked. I have a weak stomach sometimes. I'm not ashamed. But yeah, that has always stuck with me as something really, really, really good. Characters from the series, as I mentioned earlier with Sarah, I wanted more of Roger from Dawn because I loved his very cavalier and charismatic way about himself. But then there's something that happens in this where he almost gets bit by the girl zombie in the truck when he's trying to hotwire it, and he snaps. He has this moment of like shell shock, and it's just the actor. What's Roger something or no? Help me out here.
Which
Scott
is the one
something.
played by Ken Foree or
the white guy, Scott Reidinger or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me look it up real quick.
So has this look in his eyes, that 1,000-yard stare, like he's looked death right in the face, and he goes, "Ah!" and he shoots the girl, and he's like, "You bastards, you bastards," and his voice breaks.
Yeah,
and
you're right. His name's Roger. Scott Reininger is the actor. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Reininger or Reininger. And they call him Trooper a lot in the film as like a nickname.
Yeah, which I didn't realize that was his nickname. I just thought that was just something that Ken Foree's character would just randomly throw in. But there's just something about that moment. Like there's so many great character moments throughout each of these movies that I think really go underappreciated. And then there's moments like with Captain Rhodes in Day, where he gives that big speech in the war room, I guess you could call it, when he yells, "I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein, and I want to know what the
Yeah.
fuck it is you're doing with my time." You feel the frustration, the menace. This guy will kill you, and he's looking for a reason. I haven't felt a threat from these movies. Like there's like Kaufman's a bad guy in Land, but
Yeah.
he's business asshole number 12. Captain
Yeah.
Rhodes will
Yeah.
hunt you down, or he'll
Yeah.
feed you to these things and watch you die. And that's something Romero never was able to recapture in his movies, was to give you a super compelling villain.
Yeah, he's the
And
best villain of the whole series, yeah. And
mhm.
in real life, he was probably one of the nicest, like, horror celebrities I ever met at a convention. He's super, super nice guy.
But say he passed away in the early 2000s, didn't he?
Yeah, he's gone now, unfortunately.
Yeah, like a lot of these people have passed away. Although I remember when I was watching the movie True Grit, and McDermott shows up as the coffin guy, and he's like, and if you'd like to sleep in the coffin, that would be all right. And I squeed in the theater because I was like, oh my god, I know you. And nobody knew what the fuck I was talking about. But yeah. All right, let's go to Alex and then James. Moments that really stuck for you.
As much as I talked about Land, that was just sort of the experience as a whole. If we're going with iconic deaths, drawing a blank on his name. It's the biker in Dawn that ends up getting pulled apart on the ground. I think that's one of the first times we'd ever seen something like that, where he's being pulled apart and he's still alive and he's seeing them pulling his guts out, which has become such an iconic thing in zombie movies. And I just was thinking, like, that was pretty extreme for the time period. Also, going the other end of the spectrum, like, that's the spectacle of, oh my god, oh, that's so cool. But then to go to the other end of the spectrum in the same film, I think it's near the beginning, the first time you see all the kids getting shot.
Yeah, I never expected that in a movie.
For back then, like, they cut it up quite well so that it didn't look like they were directly shooting, but like, it's cut enough and edited in such a way, but you're like, whoa, you don't usually see kids getting shot in movies.
Yeah, I mean, don't let me quote him, but I do remember at a Q&A, Ken Forey was saying that was very uncomfortable, to film that scene because it was, he didn't want to do it. But I think that scene is really important in the film because it shows you what would happen in a zombie apocalypse. It would be like, okay, if this was really happening, like, it would be like adults and kids would all be affected. And like, it's so grim. And it's like, that's what Romero did. He always pushed the envelope with these horror films.
And then finding some sort of weird balance where it's like, you have this really grim, like, oh my god, sorrowful and just horrific scenery like that, and then you mix it with like a scene of levity with synth music. You're like, what is going on with this film?
Oh yeah, Dawn of the Dead has what's so great about that movie is that it has so many different moods. It's just, it takes you on this journey. There's parts that are horrifying, and there's parts that are funny, and there's parts that are sad. Like there's that one section where it seems like they're safe. They've locked all the zombies out, and now they're just sort of just living inside of this mall. And then time passes, and you see them like playing tennis or whatever. Just they kind of get back to like a leisurely lifestyle within
Yeah,
the
like
confines of this mall.
at the beginning, they're all excited, grabbing like, oh my god, we just grabbed like a $300 block of cheese. Like they're going for all the luxuries they could have never normally afforded, and then later on, it's just like business as usual. When it's time to get new clothes, like they went from picking out like fancy stuff to just picking up whatever regular clothes they could find. Like, because it wore off the appeal of you've done everything you've ever wanted to do. Now what do you do?
Yeah, and it's kind of optimistic, where near the beginning, they're fighting with each other. I mean, they have guns drawn on each other when uh, the, he the Ken Foree character points the gun at Flyboy, and says, "How do you like it to have a gun pointed at you?" Uh, Even though it was like all like an accident, but there's sort of like fighting with each other a bit, but then as it goes on, they really become more and more friendly with each other, and they respect each other, and they work together, and that's one of the more optimistic aspects of the film, because most of Romero's films, they usually show people at their worst. Like that's kind of like the theme is just you know dehumanization of society.
So, to look at these movies, James, what is some like from all of them? Again, what's your favorite character, zombie, or kill? What really stuck out to you?
Character, zombie, or kill. I was trying to follow what you guys were doing. Was it? Is it? Because I'm not quite sure where to go. But is one of each? Did we do like zombie? Character,
Anything
kill?
you want to do. Anything.
Oh, anything.
Basically,
Okay.
favorite scene, or something very memorable to you.
Oh, okay, that's pretty much anything. Yeah. Well, the first one, I guess I picked one from the first three. It's like, well, the first one, well, I mentioned the stabbing scene. That was very memorable. Well, how about the main character getting shot at the end? I mean,
Yeah.
brutal,
Yeah.
absolutely brutal. Like I couldn't believe it when I saw it as a kid. I was like, I thought the one guy who was going to survive doesn't survive, and it's all over like a misunderstanding. And then like, um, because how many horror films can you think of where nobody lives? I mean, usually they let one person live, Um, and then Dawn of the Dead, there's just too many scenes to count. I mean, but there's like little comedic moments that stick out to me. Like I just remember that when the biker gang discovers the mall, and the Tom Savini character is looking at him with binoculars, and he says to the other guy, the guy with the mustache, he's like, look at them, they're all, blocking themselves in there. And then the guy with the mustache just goes, son of a bitch. And then he says, oh, they got trucks blocking off the entrances. He goes, yeah, trucks. And just repeats everything he says. It's this just little funny moments like that. And there's too many of them to count. And then Day of the Dead, it's everything with Captain Rhodes. I just remember every scene that he's in. Yeah, there you go. There's just great movies, tons of great moments.
There's one moment right near where Rhodes dies. It's where Steele has backed himself into a corner. He's in Dr. Logan's lab and he's been bit. And you just see the look in the actor's eyes as he crosses his chest, starts firing off a few more rounds. He realizes he has like one round left, and he's afraid to kill himself, but he knows he doesn't want to come back because he's already had to kill a couple of his friends.
Yeah.
And like there's just Romero or the casting director, whoever, really knew how to pick good people in these movies. Like the only actor I really didn't like in across almost all of them, the actor that played Flyboy, Steven, he's the only one I didn't like. And for a long time, yeah, there's just something about his performance
David,
I didn't
MD.
like. Yeah, like just
he's the best zombie. I think when he turns into a zombie at the end of Dawn of the Dead, I think that's the best zombie in any of them, because he did that all in acting. Like they didn't have as much of the effects they did in Day of the Dead, where like, they had more decomposition, more guts coming out of them. But David Emge, he just did this thing where he just twisted his leg.
Yeah.
And he kind of has that gun dangling off of his finger. Like he doesn't know it's there, but it's just hanging because he had it last time when he died. And then, something about that wound on that neck, like it's so convincing that it just looks like the way he's twisting his neck. I just buy that it's like, that's what he said too. I think like on one of the commentaries or interviews, I think one time he was like, I just want to just be the one that they all remember. I just want to like do the best I can as a zombie. And he really took it to a whole higher art.
There's something about his death that is always kind of, I've created, I guess you could call it like head canon sort of thing. I want to say after all the zombies were out of the elevator, I've always assumed he had one more round in his gun. I'm probably remembering the scene wrong,
Okay.
but I want to say I just get this gut feeling like he died a coward. Like there's something about his actions. If he had just not shot at those bikers and shut the fuck up and listened to Peter, sure, the mall would have been overrun. Could they have retaken it? Maybe. But even if they couldn't, they had that wall. Nobody knew they were there. They might have been okay. They could have reinforced their position because essentially you have 10,000 guard dogs wandering outside. But because Steven got greedy and arrogant, everybody died.
They could have survived long enough to have them get bored and leave one day and then still gather supplies and left.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to our final discussion points here.
Well, we should probably say something. One thing we haven't mentioned, how progressive the casting was.
Yes.
Especially of the first few films. For the time period, we're just so used to it where we have diverse cast now. But at the time, like, that was not the norm.
Yeah, because I know with the first one, George cast his friend, but he had to audition. It just happened to be he was the best person who auditioned. And then it became a racial film because I was watching an interview with Romero and they were driving the first work print up to New York. And that was the night Martin Luther King was assassinated. And suddenly this became a racial movie. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll take it. I didn't intend for that. I didn't make the character out to be like this because Ben was written to be a more rough, tough, kind of roughneck guy. But Dwayne said to George, can you maybe make him a little more gracious and well-spoken? Let me come through. And look what we got. One of the best performances from that movie. And yeah, I mean, the casting for all these movies is really good. Like Ken Foree is awesome, and have a black action hero that wasn't Shaft. I can't think of any.
I think Dwayne Jones was actually the first in a horror film, at least, that the main character. I mean, that's some groundbreaking stuff right there.
And then having the character of Fran from Dawn start out weak and become strong, whereas Barbara in the original was just stupid. There's no way to say it.
Yeah.
She didn't get good until 1990.
Yeah, I saw an interview one time with Romero where he said that he's been apologizing ever since, and that's why he wrote the female lead to be much stronger in the sequels, because he kind of messed it up the first time. It was really just not the best choice, and she was, like you said, she's a character who's just Barbara in the original. She has nothing much to do other than just scream and be frantic the whole time.
She was much more at place in a 1950s movie than an almost 1970 movie. If that she would have fit better in like an early 50s monster movie than she would have in there.
Yeah.
So final discussion points coming up. Okay, so the zombie apocalypse has happened. The dead walk. You are at home. You see a news report, you see a tweet, maybe somebody calls you, then the phone cuts out. Something has happened. What do you do? Let's start with Alex on this one. What is your zombie plan in the ideal world?
Oh, the ideal world. Okay,
yeah.
We'll start
and
there.
Then what's really going to happen to you?
Okay. So, I'm assuming I'm at home. This is Canada, right?
Yes. You are at home right now.
And, well, I actually have, from my grandfather, a shortwave radio that works on AM, FM, everything, and it picks up all of the emergency stations. So I'm turning on the old radio because I know that's if we're going to get a broadcast of anything going wrong. Let's say we have no power and this thing runs. It's one of those ones you can crank it for power, right? So you can like wind it up. So like power's out, phone's dead, internet's dead. All of my neighbors are like, what the heck is going on? I'm turning on the only radio that'll work, and that would assume would be receiving an emergency broadcast, because there's got to be something. And if it's completely dead and we're not getting any broadcasts, then I am trying to find my way to see my family first, or getting together with some friends and getting in a car and trying to find my family to group up and see what's going on. And if we find out that zombies are coming, then we are gathering all the supplies that we can that are essential, like firewood and matches and bottled water and food. And we're driving as far north as we can and going up to somewhere like Manitoulin Island, where it's like, what's the farthest north you can get in Canada that has roads? And that's where we're going, because the farther north you go, the less bodies there are. It's also more likely to, when things get cold, they're not likely to walk through that the same way, I'm assuming, the bodies. And we're becoming northern people, and that's where we're going to stay.
All right, so my zombie plan, if this were to realistically happen right now, for those listeners that don't know, I am an amputee. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm also a pretty big guy, so my mobility is severely limited. Now, thankfully, I do have a manual wheelchair that I would have to get around in, but means I have to trust somebody to help me. And fortunately, I have some pretty good friends and neighbors, along with my wife, who's built like a tank, and I have weapons. I have several very, very good knives. I have machetes. I got a katana machete, and I'm talking cold steel stuff, not the stuff you'd buy at a flea market.
You're going with Highlander rules here?
You know what? It's better than not having anything, because you don't have access to something significant like a gun.
True.
Or do you?
This is Canada.
Yes, this is Canada.
This is Canada. It's like 1% of people have the guns.
Yeah. I'm probably going to follow a strategy similar to you. Look for a place that's isolated, such as an island, but failing that, defensible position away from a main city. Because presuming that power probably is going to be around too long, I'm also a person who's heavily dependent upon medication. Now, thankfully in Canada, my insulin is free, and my diabetes, if I'm careful, I can control it with minimal insulin. So I'm probably okay. My next door neighbor is former military. He's one of my best friends. He's done real, genuine survive in the woods stuff. He is the mountain man. And I would feel safe with him guiding us, because
this is your realistic plan, or is this your idealist?
In my ideal world, I'd have my grandfather's shotguns and rifles, because I don't often miss. But I'm also not going to say I'm a sniper either.
Okay.
I'm a good shot, but I'm not, like I said, a sniper. Problem is, as you mentioned, this is Canada. Guns are hard to come by. So I would love to hole up in a place like, and I'm going to admit I stole this from Walking Dead, a prison. Prisons are typically located in isolated areas. They have high fences. They have really good internal security, and a lot of the locks are mechanical. So you don't have to worry about electricity. You just have keys, at least around here. And even a minimum security prison would be better than nothing. And if you can raid a Costco or a Walmart before you go somewhere, you're going to have a good chunk of what you need.
Why not just hold up at the Costco?
Presumably, I would assume more people are going to be coming, plus the places like that aren't meant to be defended. They're meant to be got out of quickly, which means multiple fire exits. This means a way out is a way in. So defensibility plus a Costco will likely be located in a densely populated center and likely easily accessible by road. I want someplace that's difficult to get to, so at least I can see them coming. So that's my that's my ideal world plan. It's a lot of situational awareness, but recognizing I have a handicap to work with.
Fair enough. So now it's James's turn.
Yeah, it's James' turn.
And we've taken probably the good ideas, I think.
I mean, you guys went really in depth with it. I don't think I have anything like that. All I'm saying is I'm finding a shopping mall. And,
well, you see, you also have the ability, being in the States, you're getting the guns.
I was about to say, yeah, you likely, other than me and Alex, you don't have you have access to firearms. We don't.
The realistic thing is, you grab a bunch of guns and you meet us up here, and we all go north.
Okay.
And
just got to watch out for the biker gang taking over the mall.
Pretty much, and
One
then
thing they didn't prepare for. Yep.
You got to go north, but you can't go so far north that the polar bears want to come down. So
yeah.
Although that's something else.
Or wait a minute, what could we use the polar bears as an advantage?
No.
Could they take out the zombies?
Because the worst thing that can happen is you get a polar bear that goes after a zombie. The zombie bites the polar bear, and we have like zombie bears.
Oh, Mike! Wait a minute. Did they ever address that?
They did in Survival. Because the zombie attacks the horse, but I don't remember what happens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that's a big question. Does it affect animals? Because that hasn't been tapped into enough.
Yeah, I mean, there is a movie on Netflix called Zoo or some shit like that. It's fucking stupid.
Like, I would imagine, had they gone forward with another film, it might not have been bears, but maybe they're at a zoo and it affects like a gorilla or other primates.
Yeah.
A zombie gorilla would be terrifying.
Dead Alive, I do know that like it started with like
the monkey
thing.
But yeah, so Mike, what is your realistic?
My realistic plan is half of the plan that I told you. It's going to be concentrating supplies and weapons, utilizing my next door neighbor, taking what medicine I can, ideally meeting up with my sister, who's a nurse practitioner, so she's virtually a doctor. I've got that taken care of, going up to find my wife's mother, and going as far north as I can and hoping to God we find supplies. So
pretty much the same story.
Pretty much the same story. However, though, I have to be realistic about this. I'm handicapped. I'm a liability. And that means
they wouldn't just completely leave you.
No, but if it meant if you have to stay behind so we can get away, and that's not false bravado saying, oh, I'm so brave, I'm going to martyr myself. It's recognizing sometimes the needs of the many outnumber the needs of the few. And that's an unfortunate reality because as the Romero rules of their universe, anybody who dies, no matter the cause, comes back. If you get bit, it just means you come back that much faster. So you have to recognize this problem will never go away because they'll never run out of food.
Now, so realistically, mine would be I'm dead.
Yeah,
that's it. I don't make it. No, but realistically, again, very similar. You try to do the best, but I think the roads would be jammed. There would be too many people trying to escape at the same time. So realistically, you'd hole up with your family and then just hope that the military can do something.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So, James, what is your realistic plan? If it happened right this minute, what are you going to do?
If it's any different from what your ideal would be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you bring a lot to the imagination. My mind is spinning, thinking about different outcomes.
Because you have friends and family that you can rely on, but then that's more people you're responsible for. So there's so many things that people have to think because Romero tapped into that. What are you going to do? It brings out the worst in people. Can it bring out the best in people? And we don't always see that. And you have to think you now live in a world where you have two enemies now. You've got the dead and the living.
Yeah.
And that's something that I appreciate about his movies is that it makes you think about the type of person you want to be as opposed to the person that you have to be in that moment. Because the biker gang, yeah, as Peter says, that's a professional army. They've been surviving on the road throughout this whole thing. they're just doing what they have to survive too. Sure, they're assholes about it, but they're just trying to live too. So again, it's a complicated situation. Plus, we have to wonder, is Alex right? What's the military going to do? What are the police going to do? One of the people in Dawn of the Dead says, well, we haven't touched upon our nuclear resources. Why don't we drop bombs on all the big cities? Who's to say they're not going to nerve gas the cities? We don't know. Or napalm the cities. Like there's something.
Yeah, but the nerve gas isn't going to do anything because it's going to make more dead.
Yeah, but we also might not know that. Like,
That's
it could
true.
be. Yeah, like there's terrible things in labs, and when the chips are down, you don't know if someone's going to pop off.
Or I was waiting for somebody to say that their plan would be go grab their friends and then meet up at the pub, like Shaun of the Dead, right? You know, kill your stepfather, go to
kill Phil.
Yeah, it's always the same. Slightly different plans, but Phil has to die in every one of them, right?
But yeah, I mean, it's weird because when I think about the possibility of the living dead, obviously it's likely not to happen, but you look at how the world has responded to things like COVID and SARS and all the big viruses we've had in the last 20 something years. And one thing I saw, to refer back to that CDC training exercise, there are people who are going to hide a bite. Those are the people that you let into a population center and the bite spreads literally geometrically. So if this were to really happen, I don't hold out a lot of hope for humanity, unfortunately.
In that sense, the films are very realistic to life.
Yeah, and I think that's why I like them. They didn't talk down to you. And the first movie showed it, as James said, they killed Ben. It was a misunderstanding, but they killed him. And I'd never seen a horror movie or a horror franchise just say, you and your friends are dead. Fucking deal with it. So I guess as we begin to close out the show here.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. I know, right? Welcome to Happy Nihilism. Here's an Arby's. Like, what thing have you walked away from watching all these movies? Like, have you learned anything? Has anything really affected you or anything like that? And I'll start to kind of give you guys a second to think about it. One of the things while watching these is, as I just mentioned, the Romero has a very dark view of the world, and occasionally moments of good shine through. And it makes me question bravery and morality in extraordinary circumstances, as I'm sure people in difficult jobs, be they soldiers or policemen, have to make very tough decisions in a split second. I think about just the decisions you would have to make in these terrible situations. What makes you hold on to your humanity in those situations? What makes you different from the dead? They're just trying to survive. So are you. But what makes you different? What keeps you human? And because I'm pursuing a creative writing process right now, I think about the philosophical implications of these. And obviously Romero had commentary about commercialism and how we treat each other and the rich and the poor, etc., etc. And that's what I like about these movies. I never had a horror movie give me philosophy questions. I never thought, why does Michael Myers kill? What makes Chucky tick? They were just monsters. Whereas Romero's world took the world that we knew, introduced a new element into it, and there's just something about that's very, very, very appealing to me. So, James, what have you learned or taken from these as a whole?
What have I taken from a whole? Just that, like you said, like the humans are sometimes the worst enemies, and it, yeah, I mean that's what I get out of it. That people need to work together, and when you have a zombie apocalypse in these films, it's like that's what you see. Like Dawn of the Dead has those optimistic moments, and then most of them as a whole just show when it brings out the worst in people.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Alex?
I'll finish by stating that what I take away from these films is that sometimes the most scary thing in a movie or most scary thing of a concept is that in these films they never get to know what happened, what's the cause. The horror is the not knowing and knowing that you're never going to know what caused it, and also the horror of knowing that there's nothing you can do to end it. We are creatures of habit and control, and the most scary thing we can fathom is not being able to control our own destiny. So what these show, yeah, it's bleak, yeah, it's this, but the real horror is in the whole unknowability of it.
I like that. I think that's a rather good moment to end on. So, like Alex
Although I
said,
always thought it was the Venus satellite, that they talk about in the first movie. They always say like, "Oh no, that was just like a little, decoy thing, I guess."
mm-hmm.
But I'm like, what? Why bring it up in a movie if it's not the reason?
True.
Like, if there's no reason, you shouldn't bring up any. Like in the birds, they don't answer why the birds attack. It's so if there's no reason, don't bring up anything. Otherwise, it just feels like to me. I'm like, okay, it's the Venus satellite. That's fine. That's fine with me. I don't really care. It's just a movie. So I've always maintained in my own mind that that's what caused it for the rest of the Dead, series.
One of the lines, and this will be how we'll close this out on, when Peter's talking in both versions from 2004 and 1978, where he's talking about when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth, and either be it religious or be it the space radiation. Like Alex said, the real horror of it, you can't escape it. You die, you come back, you get bit, you come back. There's no end in sight, so you might as well make what time you can.
You fear going to sleep because you don't know if you're going to wake up or if you'll wake up as one of them.
Yeah, like that's a horrifying reality, and Romero captured it before anybody else, and his legacy on film will never be forgotten. I'm very sad I never got a chance to meet him. I almost did in 2008 when we went to Fan Expo in Toronto one year. My friend Pierce did at the time.
Yeah.
And our friend Darla lived in the same building as George in Toronto, which I always thought was really cool. So, George, we miss you. Thank you for your contributions to the horror genre. I know people like Tom Savini, Greg Nicotero, and countless other special effects artists, filmmakers. Anybody in the creative industry owes you so much. Robert Kirkman definitely owes you a crisp high five.
Yeah.
So anyway, James, is there anything you want to promote for this month of October?
Sure. Yeah. I will say I did meet Romero once, and he's super nice. He was super nice, and yes, rest in peace. We do really miss him. For plugging, Monster Madness is going on right now. Truth be told, we're recording this earlier, but Monster Madness
giving away
is
trade secrets.
Yeah. I wonder if we got to the Canadian one yet. I forget because what we're doing is Monster Madness around the world. It's global horror. So we've done enough Hollywood horror. We figured let's do one from each country. So every day is a different country. So 31 countries, 31 films. Check it out on Cinemassacre. I don't know what channel it's on right now, but it's on one of our channels.
And of course, if you want to see more AVGN episodes, there'll be one up this month, as there often is. And there's other content on Cinemassacre.com as well as the YouTube channel. Be sure to check that out. Coming up from me and Alex, we should always be doing probably more roundtables if everything has gone to plan, because like James said, we're recording this early.
If everything's gone to plan, we'll have a commentary or
So
two.
the nerd episode may have been out. You may have seen the nerd episode. But our big thing this month is Monster Madness and too many games. I don't know if that happened yet, but we're playing a rock show. So we'll see.
So be sure to be looking out for that. Look out for TWIG SG1, or Tactical Weapons Integration Group, our actual play podcast in the Stargate SG1 universe, where things inevitably go wrong, because why would they ever go right with these guys? So be looking out for that. We also have Turd or Treasure, Future Imperfect, and other surprises as we move forward towards the end of the year. So be safe, be well, be vaccinated, mask up. Happy Halloween from all of us here at This Week in Geek and Cinemassacre.com. And with that, it's time to rock and roll and load up, because, hey, we got zombies to kill.
The normal question, the first question is always, are these cannibals? No, they are not cannibals. Cannibalism in the true sense of the word implies an interspecies activity. These creatures cannot be considered human. They prey on humans. They do not prey on each other. That's the difference. They attack and they feed only on warm human flesh. Intelligence? Seemingly little or no reasoning power, but basic skills remain are more remembered behaviors from normal life. There are reports of these creatures using tools, but even these actions are the most primitive. The use of external articles as bludgeons and so forth. I might point out to you that even animals will adopt the basic use of tools in this manner. These creatures are nothing but pure, motorized instinct. We must not be lulled by the concept that these are our family members or our friends. They are not. They will not respond to such emotions. They must be destroyed on sight.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
Lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.